Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob from Challenge Roth. My name is Bob Babbitt, brought to you by Master Spas, S Fuels Go Longer, HOKA, Let's Fly, Form Smart Swim Goggles, Zoot Sports, the original triathlon brand, Premium Plus Sports, and of course, our Challenge Athletes Foundation, and more importantly, Rainer, the best accordion player in the world. Thank you, Rainer. Our next guest, Dr. Dan Plews, joins us. Endure IQ, coach to Javier Gomez, Chelsea Sodaro, Pablo De Pena, you name it. You coach Jan van Berkel.
Yep.
So, Dan, take me back a little bit. Getting into triathlon, did you start out a runner, cyclist, swimmer?
I started out a triathlete, really.
You started really?
Yeah. I started a triathlete. I think I started it when I was 9.
Really?
Yeah. I've probably been doing it longer than you.
No. Yeah, they call that child abuse nowadays.
Yeah, I started pretty young, swim run when I was 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, and went through the ranks. I've had a tough paper round, as they say. Done a few miles.
Yes, you've done a few miles. And especially the high point, Kona 2018, 8:24:36. The best age group time in history, correct?
Yeah.
Still, to this day.
Yeah, and it's only getting better with every 2 years now, so it's just upping my chances of retaining it, isn't it?
Yes. So, yeah, they move it around. And Nice will be hard for someone to go that fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. And it's got to be in Kona.
It's going to be it's a course record. It's not an Ironman record.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's right. It's a course record.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
Cool. But a 250 marathon, that was like one of the better marathons of the day, correct?
Fifth
fastest marathon of the day among the pros and everybody else.
At the time, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
surprised myself with that one, to be honest.
In your lead up to this, I know you've been dealing with some Achilles issues, but one of your real strengths is you design training programs, building, with fat and carb efficiency for race day, all that type of the scientific side of sport is what makes you special.
Yeah.
Talk a little about how you use that for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's quite handy because I think it's always good to test things on yourself a little bit,
right?
You know, before you go, and especially when you're working with pros, you can't just go and throw random things at them that you haven't tested before.
I wonder if this will work.
Yeah, I wonder if this will work. Let's try this one. But yeah, I mean, I've always believed I don't really follow the traditional high carb dogma that's all the time. You know, I use this right fuel, right time approach, but it doesn't mean that I avoid carbohydrates at all times.
Right.
It's more, lower intensity rise, based more of a fat-based fuel, and then supplementing with high intensity. So for the higher intensity sessions, which I think is an easier thing for most people to get their head around is this right fuel, right time approach. So I mean, for example, we were training. We've just been in St. Moritz,
right, with Chelsea, and
Jan van Berkel. Yeah, so we were all training there together, and we did one really long ride, which was 6.5 hours. Mine and Jan's fat metabolism is very high. It's very good. So we pretty much did the whole 6.5 hour rides on no carbohydrates.
Really?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, actually, we had a protein bar towards the end, but with Chelsea, we take a bit of a different approach because we use the data to
tell you what to use.
Yeah, exactly. So she started.
You're not guessing.
Yeah, exactly. So she started the first bit, and then we put in the carbohydrates after. But then, if we're doing any high intensity, we use different approaches based on the individual,
right?
Really, yeah.
So back in the day, going in Ironman, I never understood why I didn't have good races. We'd have these carbo parties on Thursday night where it was like Mrs. T's pierogies and cream sauce, and it was like, oh my God, I felt like a bloated pig on race day. Yeah. And now salads and things like that, I want to feel lighter going into races. There's been a big change in the way people approach racing and training.
I think so, yeah. And I mean, even like we published some research that if you really, really fuel very highly on carbohydrates and do the carbo loading, you can actually, your fat metabolism goes down, which is probably meaning that you're going to be using more carbohydrates.
Oh, interesting.
Come racing. So published in Sports Medicine, which is one of the biggest.
Yes, one of the biggest around.
One of the biggest around. So, so it's not like just me saying it. We did a meta-analysis and showed it.
Right.
So, and I think it's quite interesting that most people report that they do feel a bit sluggish if they go too hard before racing with the carbohydrates. So. Yeah, it's just about finding what's right for you. I mean, for the athletes that I coach, we do introduce a bit more carbohydrates coming into racing, but it's just the right amount, not more is better, which seems to be the idea.
When did you connect with S Fuels and Leighton and his team?
So I connected with Leighton in about 2017 in S Fuels. It was actually I was already following a low carb approach to train.
Like a keto type of.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of experimentation in the early days. Very low, and I'm definitely not as low as I was in the early days now. But it was more that I was just finding there was a real gap at finding fuels during exercise, the right fuels for exercise. Unless I was fasting and and just having water in my bottle, I wasn't getting the calories in, and I felt there was a real niche, and that's why me and Leighton connected at S Fuels, and they've got products that provide people who don't want to have loads of carbohydrates during the low intensity sessions with the fuels to have that.
So you've trained athletes not just in triathlon, but 25 world and Olympic titles, rowing, kayaking. Yeah. How, in terms of the difference for nutrition, when those are power, high intensity type of, it's two different gigs.
Exactly, and I think that's where it's important to know determinants of success in different sports, right? It's, as I always say, you're not improving your bench press and going faster in Ironman.
Right. I remember years ago we had a guy win this contest to do the Ironman, and it was like people could just write in, and the guy who won it was sort of a bodybuilder guy.
Yeah.
And the first thing Paul Huddle said is, "We're going to take 100 pounds off your bench press."
Exactly.
Right?
And it's the exact same thing. Is that in sports like rowing, for example, 6-minute event.
Yes.
Having a high fat metabolism has no outcome.
Cares.
It has no outcome on the event, and but whereas in Ironman, it does have an outcome because it's important to preserve your internal, we call endogenous carbohydrate stores. So
yes.
Yeah.
So you start working with Chelsea Sodaro, who comes from she was an elite runner at Cal Berkeley, and she was running on the Diamond League circuit, but 6 stress fractures in college, and then moves off into triathlon. And so she's really starting from ground zero.
Yep.
And then while you guys are working together a little bit, COVID hits, she gets pregnant.
Yes, yeah.
And one of the things that she told me that really impressed her, she was so nervous about calling you because she thought you'd be all upset. It's like, oh, I'm just started. And you were so supportive and so understanding that this is wonderful.
Yeah.
And we're going to, this is what life is all about, and you still got a goal in sport, but you're also a mom, going to be a mom, which is great. And they work together
for sure. And I think like my philosophy as a coach is that it's all, as a coach you help people, right? You're not there to just make them win or do well. You're there to provide them with a supporting service to help them be their best,
right?
And regardless of what it, obviously it's not easy to win when you're going to be pregnant, but it's, for me, I just saw it as, okay, it's just a method that we have to get through, and we go through the process. It's not really, I never really gave it a second thought.
So how do you train in terms of, you got Javier Gomez, you've got Jan van Berkel, Chelsea Sodaro, 3 obviously very different athletes.
Yeah.
How do you create training programs, nutrition programs for those 3 distinct athletes?
Yeah, and Aaron Royal as well.
Oh, and Aaron Royal. There you go.
Yeah, don't forget Aaron. And
I will never forget Aaron. That guy, I've always felt that guy he's going to, it's 70.3 Worlds, one of those races, he's going to win.
Yeah, he's a real talent as well. I mean, I think, we're very data driven in our approach, but so I think we always take this approach where we use lab data to build the early stages of the training program, look at the weaknesses, look at what needs to be done. But then, to be honest, like as we come into the closer to racing, the training is not that different because we have to be demand driven. So we look at the demands of the event, and of course, what Javier has to do is very similar to what Chelsea has to do. Right. Unless you're training for a PTO versus an Ironman, of course, then it's different. But if 2 people are training for an Ironman, the training is reasonably similar. Obviously, different powers, paces, and heart rates and whatnot. But it's very, very similar. And when we've been in St. Moritz, I tried to match up Chelsea and Jan as best I could, so they can be. I think there's a lot of benefit for them training together at times. But obviously, Jan would do different paces. Sure. He'd do slightly more, do a few extra runs, a little bit more volume. But that's the kind of approach we take. Yeah.
So, new research. What new research are you seeing for fat oxidation, efficiency, and performance? So
we haven't done much ourselves recently, but there has been some pretty good stuff come out recently that was by it's actually from the Tim Noakes group. Canuck. It was looking at 800 meters and fat oxidation running, and just showing that fat oxidation is much higher than we actually realize, even at high intensity. And the interesting thing, Bob, and I always tell this to anyone who'll listen, but they think I'm crazy, is that we have this idea in sports nutrition that at a high intensity fat oxidation is 100%. It's definitely zero, and I'm not saying it isn't, but we actually don't really know because we can't measure it. So we measure in the lab, and we measure what we call indirect calorimetry, which is when we wear the mask. And
right.
Once we go above 80% of VO2 max, we're not really able to measure true carbohydrate and fat oxidation anymore. So it's probably higher than we believe. And this new research showed that even at 80% of VO2 max, it was still quite substantial.
So when you design the training build-up, you got fat and carb efficiency. Is it different for the training sessions and for race day?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when it comes to race day, it's we get in as much carbs as we can, right? Because it's not. It's important. It's important. Yeah, it's important. But it's about training the efficiency during training to. I mean, with a lot of people, it allows you to take a little bit less as well a lot of the time. So, which I think is good, particularly if you're not that if your gut can't handle fructose, which many athletes can't do, and GI distress is the #1 reason for DNF in long distance triathlon. So if you can increase the fat metabolism, take out the fructose because and take a little bit less, it's important.
Right.
If you need to ingest high rates of carbohydrates, you need to include fructose,
right?
Because of the way it oxidates. You can oxidize if you combine glucose and fructose. You can oxidize more carbohydrates, so that's why it's included in a lot of sports products. But for many people, it doesn't always end that well.
So your time in Kona was faster than Chelsea's.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Marginally. Well, actually, what was it? It was 7. She was 33.
Yeah,
33. And I was 24.
So you guys are both racing here on Sunday. I know you've got a little asterisk because of the Achilles thing going on. So it's gonna be a battle.
I don't know if it will be a battle. I mean, for a couple of reasons, Bob. Not that I like giving excuses, but I'm going to give you a few.
Okay, I want to take a few. Yeah. You're a parent. You're allowed.
Yeah, exactly. So one is, I said to Chelsea, it's a win-win for me. If she, obviously, I'd be nothing more than her to. If she does as well as she can do,
right,
she'll definitely beat me.
Yes,
so,
that's good.
And I think then will probably win the race. So.
And that's what it's all about.
Well, that's what it's all about. Yeah, and I obviously and I've had this little Achilles niggle I've only been running for a week after more than 2 weeks of no running.
That's plenty.
Yeah, we'll see.
Where were you watching when Chelsea won?
I was in New Zealand, yeah.
Were you really?
I was watching on the TV.
Were you going crazy?
Yeah, I was. It was funny because I don't really like watching. It's
a long race.
It's a long race, and I get a bit nervous about it. So I actually took my kids to visit a new daycare. So I was out. I turned my phone off because I was walking around, and then I turned it back on. And I think she was just coming to the end of the bike, and I had lots of messages saying, "You should start watching now." So I turned it on, and I mean, as soon as I saw the gap onto the run, I thought it was a done deal.
Yes. Yeah. It's so funny. I was interviewing Sarah Crowley.
Yeah.
And she was out there, and Chelsea was near them on the bike. And I don't know if it was Sarah's coach or somebody else's. It was like yelling, "Get rid of Chelsea! We don't want her there at the end of the bike because you know what type of runner she is." Yeah,
and she's in very good shape at the moment.
Well,
so I'm
really
and
happy. She's riding and swim. She's doing it all.
Yeah. So I'm really happy with where she's at. So should be a good little
in the
race.
Field with Annie Hogg and herself and everybody.
It's going to be it's going to be a real
Laura
good one.
And Fenella. It's always nice. A lot of times these races it's almost like you go to a golf course and there's one pro. Right?
Yeah.
And having 10 great male and female pros who could potentially win the race.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be fantastic. So you're going to have a front row seat.
Yeah, I will have a front row seat. I already talked to Chelsea. I said, do I get a high five when we cross over on the canal? But
What'd she say?
She said, cold execution. So maybe I'll get one towards the end.
That is very, very cool. Yeah. Well, congratulations, Dan.
Yeah,
you've been doing some great work. Look at all your. Now, what's Javier going to do this year?
So I mean, Javier's had it's been a bit complicated, a little bit of injury, but we're still working hard together to get things.
Is his goal to try to get to Nice?
Or maybe
Finland?
not this year, but
okay.
we'll hopefully he'll make a comeback. Yeah,
nice.
So
and Jan?
Yeah, Jan's got Toon in 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's going to be his last race as a pro as well.
Really?
Yeah. So he's retiring after that. So we've been over here from New Zealand for a while now, and so we leave from here, and then we'll go and watch Jan
do his last race,
which will be really special.
It'll be very emotional.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been coaching him since 2016. Yeah.
You know, what's always interesting to me is I love seeing when an athlete and a coach work together, like Brent McMahon working with his coach Lance Watson forever, Ben Canute and Jim Vance. There's just you both mature together. You both learn from each other. Patience is a virtue when it comes to that coach-athlete relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And finding the right athlete to make sure they mesh with you. Yeah. That's probably the hardest thing.
Yeah, it is. And I've been with most of the athletes that I've coached. I've been very fortunate that I've worked with very good people. And,
yes.
And I'll definitely. I was speaking to me and Chelsea about riding the other day, and I was talking about Jan, and I'll miss our interaction more than anything,
course.
Because I think we'll naturally drift apart because we won't have a reason to talk as much. But
right.
We're good friends and we have a good laugh. And the time that the three of us had together in St. Moritz was so enjoi's, and I think it was.
Well, just getting up every day and training with world-class athletes. And the nice thing about the mix you had, Javi's trying, or not Javi, but Jan's training for something totally different.
Yeah.
And Chelsea's at a totally different stage of her career. Basically, her career just got going as a triathlete, and Jan's is winding down. So there's no competition.
No, there's not.
When that's the nice when you have two athletes who are in the same position like that. I used to love it when I talked to Ryan Bolton, and he'd have his Ben Hoffman be down there training with Caroline from Kenya. Rotich. Caroline Rotich, because Ben would go, oh my God, she's sleeping 12 hours a day. How does she do that? So he's learning recovery from her, and she can't believe he's swimming and riding and doing all this other stuff. So the athletes learn from each other without a feeling of competition, which is very sweet.
And I think one of the main things Chelsea probably learned from the time with me and Jan is that you don't have to be that serious all the time, because right? Because we're not that serious.
There's 24 hours in a day.
Yeah, exactly.
There's times to be focused, but there's also time to understand that this is a pretty cool way to make a living.
Yeah, and it definitely is. So.
Love it. Dan, thanks so much for always being so generous with time.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you.
Dan Plews has been our guest. Again, that wraps up day one. Breakfast with Bob from Challenge Roth. My name is Bob Babbitt, and appreciate you all tuning in. Tell your buddies that tomorrow we got a full slate, and it's going to be a great day. Until tomorrow, see ya.